In the beginning, there was no book, no sacred text, no written commandments handed down from the gods. The Vikings did not have a Bible. They did not have a Quran. What they had were stories. Stories told around the hearth fire, passed from grandfather to grandchild, sung by poets in the halls of kings. For centuries, these stories lived only in memory, only in voice, only in the minds of those who listened. This was a world of oral tradition. The skalds, what we would call poets, held a position of immense respect in Viking society. Their task was to create and tell dramatic poems about the heroic actions of their masters. They would compose verses praising kings and warriors, maintaining or enhancing their reputation. The word skald itself derives from the Old Norse word skald, dating from the early Viking age. These skalds were often part of the king's inner circle of housecarls. Their meters were called drakve, the meters of the housecarls. They had to be able to improvise and conjure up verses about heroes and battles whenever the king wished, sometimes even before an important battle, to give courage to the warriors. The oldest preserved skaldic verses date from the 9th century. Even though they were communicated orally, a few of the most popular ones were eventually written down. An entire skaldic epic is preserved on the Karlovi runestone on Erland, dating from the 11th century. And today, many verses survive in the Icelandic sagas, written down during the 12th and 13th centuries. Then, in the 13th century, long after the Viking Age had ended, something remarkable happened. Christian scholars in Iceland began to write down the old stories. The most important of these scholars was Snorri Sturluson. Born in 1179 into one of Iceland's most powerful families, Snorri was a poet, historian, and chieftain. Between about 1221 and 1225, he wrote a book we now call the Prose Edda, or the Younger Edda. It was intended as a handbook for young poets who needed to understand the old myths in order to compose traditional poetry. Snorri's work is remarkable for several reasons. It presents Norse mythology in a coherent, entertaining way. It explains the ornate diction of the ancient skalds. And it does something extraordinary. It offers a Christian interpretation of pagan beliefs, suggesting that the old gods were actually historical figures who had been misunderstood. Around the same time, an unknown collector gathered older poems into a manuscript now known as the Codex Regius, the royal book. This collection, which we call the Poetic Edda or Elder Edda, contains 31 poems composed between 800 and 1100 AD. These poems are in a terse, archaic style, dramatic dialogues that tell of gods like Odin and Thor, and heroes like Sigurd the Dragon Slayer. The Codex Regius was lost for centuries. In 1643, it came into the possession of an Icelandic bishop who sent it as a gift to the King of Denmark, hence its name. For over 300 years, it remained in Copenhagen. Finally, in 1971, it was returned to Iceland, transported by ship with a military escort. Together, these two books are our windows into the Viking mind. They show us how the Norse people understood the world, a world created from fire and ice, a world held together by a great ash tree, a world destined to end in fire. In the beginning, before gods, before giants, before humans, there was nothing. Or rather, there was Ginnungagap, the yawning void. An endless emptiness, silent and dark, waiting to be filled. To the north lay Niflheim, the world of mist and ice. Freezing rivers called the Yllivigar flowed from the well of Vergelmer, their venomous waters hardening into layer after layer of frost. Slowly, inexorably, ice filled the northern part of the void, bringing with it cold and gloom. To the south lay Muspelheim, the world of fire, a land of blinding light and unbearable heat, guarded by the fire giant Surtur with his flaming sword. Sparks and glowing embers flew from Muspelheim into the void, filling the southern sky with light. For ages uncounted, these two worlds remained separate, but in the emptiness between them, something impossible began to happen. Where the fiery sparks from Muspelheim met the ancient ice from Niflheim, the ice began to melt. Drop by drop, the water came to life. From these life-giving drops emerged the first living being, Ymir, the primeval giant. His name means screamer or groaner, and he was the ancestor of all the frost giants who would come after. Ymir was not like the beings we know. He was a hermaphrodite, able to reproduce without a partner. As he slept, he sweated. From under his left arm grew a man and a woman. One of his legs begot a six-headed son with the other. This was the beginning of the giant race. Ymir could not survive alone. He needed nourishment. And from the same melting ice emerged another being, Audhumla, the primeval cow. From her udders flowed 4 rivers of milk, and Ymir drank deeply. Audhumla herself needed food. She began licking the salty, rime-covered stones that lay in the void. As she licked, something miraculous happened. On the first day, a man's hair appeared beneath her tongue. On the second day, a man's head emerged. On the third day, the complete man stood free, tall, strong, and beautiful. His name was Buri, the first of the gods. Buri had a son named Bor. Bor married Bestla, the daughter of the giant Bolthorn. And from this union, the first mixing of god and giant blood, came 3 sons, Odin, Vili, and Ve. These 3 brothers would become the first true gods. They looked at the world and saw chaos. They saw the giants multiplying, threatening to overrun everything. And they decided to act. Together, they killed Ymir. It was not a small thing. When Ymir fell, so much blood poured from his wounds that it drowned almost all the frost giants. Only one survived, Bergelmir, who escaped with his family on a makeshift boat. From him, all later giants would descend. With Ymir's body, the brothers began to build. They took his flesh and made the earth. They took his blood and made the seas. They took his bones and made the mountains. From his teeth and broken bones, they made rocks and pebbles. His skull became the sky, held up by 4 dwarves named East, West, North, and South. And his brains became the clouds. The world was taking shape, a world born from conflict, from the meeting of opposites, from the body of a slain giant. And it was only the beginning.
From the ice emerged Buri, the first of the gods. Beautiful, strong, and free, he fathered a son named Bor. And Bor, seeking to unite the divine with the primordial, took as his wife Bestla, daughter of the giant Bolthorn. From this union of god and giant came 3 sons, Odin, Vili, and Ve. These 3 brothers would become the first true gods. But they looked at the world and saw chaos. They saw Ymir, the primeval giant, sleeping and sweating, spawning more and more of his kind. The giants multiplied, threatening to overrun everything. And the brothers decided to act. Together, they killed Ymir. It was not a small thing. When Ymir fell, so much blood poured from his wounds that it drowned almost all the frost giants. Only one survived, Bergelmir, who escaped with his family on a makeshift boat. From him, all later giants would descend. The names of these 3 brothers carry deep meaning. In Old Norse, Vili means will or conscious intention, and Ve means temple or the sacred. Together with Odin, whose name relates to inspiration and fury, they represent the fundamental forces that distinguish cosmos from chaos. Odin gave spirit, Vili gave intelligence and emotion, and Ve gave senses and speech. The killing of Ymir was not mere destruction. It was the first act of creation, the transformation of undifferentiated matter into a world with form and meaning. With Ymir's body, the brothers began to build. They took his flesh and made the earth. They took his blood, or, in some versions, his sweat, and made the seas and lakes. They took his bones and made the mountains. His teeth and broken bones became rocks and pebbles. From Ymir's hair, they made the trees. From his skull, they fashioned the sky, held up by 4 dwarves named East, West, North, and South. From his brains, they sculpted the clouds, heavy and gray. And from Ymir's eyebrows, the gods built a special place. They called it Midgard, the middle enclosure. A protected world for humans, safe from the giants who lurked beyond. The Poetic Edda describes this creation in the ancient poem Grimnismal. From Ymir's flesh the earth was formed. And from his bones the hills. the heaven from the skull of that ice-cold giant. And from his blood the sea. Even the maggots that burrowed into Ymir's dead flesh were given purpose. The gods transformed them into dwarves, who would live in rocks and caves, mastering the crafts of metal and stone. Ymir's name means screamer, from the Old Norse verb imja, to scream. The scream, the wordless voice, is the raw material from which words are made. By taking formless matter and giving it form, the gods were, metaphorically speaking, making words out of a scream. The world was taking shape, a world born from conflict, from sacrifice, from the body of a slain giant. And in its creation, the gods established a pattern that would echo throughout Norse mythology, order rising from chaos, cosmos emerging from the formless void. With the world created from Ymir's body, the gods looked upon their work. But something was missing. The earth was there, the sky was there, the seas and mountains were there, but no one walked upon it. One day, 3 gods were walking along the seashore. In the Prose Edda, Snorri Sturluson tells us these were Odin and his 2 brothers, Vili and Ve. In the older Poetic Edda, the poem Völuspá names them as Odin, Honor, and Lur. As they walked, they came upon 2 trees lying on the sand. Just 2 logs, washed up by the tide. Driftwood, shaped by the sea and wind. The gods stopped. They looked at the wood. And they saw potential. They took the 2 logs and shaped them into human forms. But the forms were empty, they had no life, no breath, no understanding, no purpose. So the gods gave them gifts. One of them, in some versions Odin, in others the first god, gave them breath. The breath of life. The second gave them movement and intelligence, the ability to think and feel and act. The third gave them senses, sight, hearing, speech, and outward form and beauty. The first man was made from an ash tree. They named him Askr, ash. The first woman was made from an elm tree, or perhaps a vine. They named her Embla. And then the gods gave them something else. Clothes. And a place to live, Midgard, the middle enclosure, the world of humans, protected from the giants by a wall made from Ymir's eyelash. The names of the first humans carry deep meaning. Askr, in Old Norse, means ash tree, one of the most important trees in Norse cosmology. The world tree itself, Yggdrasil, is often described as an ash. But Embla's name is more mysterious. Scholars have debated its meaning for centuries. One theory suggests it means, elm tree, a fitting companion to the ash. Another connects it to the Greek word ampelos, meaning vine or climbing plant. The linguist Gunnlaug Josefsson proposed a fascinating alternative. She argues that Embla comes from roots meaning firemaker or smokebringer. This connects to an ancient practice, creating fire with a fire plow, a method considered magical and holy in Scandinavia long into modern times. The emergence of fire through plowing was seen as symbolically linked to fertilization and reproduction. This interpretation adds a beautiful layer to the myth. The man comes from the ash tree, the world tree itself, the center of all existence. The woman brings fire, the spark of life, the sacred flame that sustains humanity. The Old Norse poem Völuspá describes what the gods gave them. One stanza lists their original state: spirit they possessed not, sense they had not, blood nor motive powers, nor goodly color. Then the gifts: spirit gave Odin, sense gave Honor, blood gave Loder, and goodly color. Ask and Embla were not created from nothing. They were shaped from the world around them, from wood, from the gifts of the gods, from the breath of life itself. They were part of nature, not separate from it. And in that, they remind us of something essential about the Viking worldview: humans are not rulers of the world, but participants in it, connected to the trees, the earth, and the gods who gave them life. Yggdrasil is the center of everything. An enormous ash tree, so vast that its branches reach into the heavens and its roots stretch into the deepest worlds. It stands forever green over the well of Ur, showered with shining loam. The name Yggdrasil itself carries deep meaning. In Old Norse, it likely means Odin's horse, a poetic way of referring to a gallows. This connects to the myth where Odin hung himself on the tree for 9 nights, wounded by his own spear, to gain knowledge of the runes. The tree of life became his tree of sacrifice. 3 massive roots support Yggdrasil, each reaching into a different realm and drawing water from 3 sacred wells. One root goes to Asgard, home of the Aesir gods. Beneath it lies the well of Ur, the well of fate. This is the holiest place in all the cosmos. Here the gods hold their daily assembly, riding up each day over the bridge Bifrost. One route goes to Jotunheim, land of the giants. Beneath it lies Mimir's well, containing wisdom and intelligence of immeasurable depth. The giant Mimir guards this well, drinking from it every morning using his horn Gjallarhorn. Odin gave one of his eyes for a single drink from this well, gaining wisdom that made him the chief of all gods. One route goes to Niflheim, the misty underworld. Beneath it lies Hvergelmir, the roaring kettle, source of all the cold rivers in the world. Here, in the darkness, dwells the dragon Nhggr. Yggdrasil is not a silent, empty tree. It teems with life, creatures that inhabit its branches, gnaw at its roots, and shape its destiny. High in the topmost branches sits a great eagle, wise and all-seeing. Between its eyes perches a hawk named Hverfilnir, whose sharp vision notices everything that happens across the 9 worlds. The beating of the eagle's wings creates the winds that blow across Midgard, touching the faces of men and women. At the opposite end, coiled among the roots, lies the dragon Nhggr, the malice striker. Together with countless serpents, he gnaws constantly at the roots of Yggdrasil, trying to bring the great tree down. He feeds on the corpses of the dead in Nastrand, the shore of corpses. Running up and down the trunk of Yggdrasil is Ratatoskr, the squirrel. His name means drill tooth or traveling tusk. He carries messages and insults between the eagle at the top and the dragon below, spreading gossip and keeping their ancient feud alive. For great stags, Dane, Dvalin, Dunir, and Durar, graze on the highest boughs of Yggdrasil, consuming its leaves and nibbling its bark. Their constant feeding weakens the tree, yet it remains evergreen. At the base of the tree, by the well of Ur, live the 3 Norns, Ur, fate, Verandi, becoming, and Skuld, obligation. They are the cosmic weavers who shape the destiny of every being, god or mortal. Each day, they draw water from the well and mix it with white clay, then pour it over Yggdrasil to keep it from withering. The water falls back to earth as dew. Yggdrasil suffers constant agony, a heart bites it from above, it decays on its sides, and Nhggr gnaws it from beneath. Yet it endures, the living axis around which all existence revolves. Odin is the chief of the Aesir. The All-Father. Ruler of Asgard and father of many gods. But he is not a kind god. He is cunning, ruthless, and willing to sacrifice anything for knowledge. He gave one of his eyes for a single drink from Mimir's well, gaining wisdom that made him supreme among the gods. He hung himself on Yggdrasil for 9 nights, pierced by his own spear, to learn the secrets of the runes. His hall is Valhalla, the hall of the slain. Half of those who die in battle come here, to feast and fight, preparing for Ragnarök. The other half go to Folkvangr, ruled by the goddess Freyja. Odin rides an 8-legged horse named Sleipnir, fastest in all the worlds. He wields the spear Gungnir, forged by dwarves, which never misses its target. On his finger he wears the golden ring Draupnir, which every 9th night produces 8 more rings of equal weight. 2 ravens perch on his shoulders, Hugin, thought, and Munin, memory. Each day he sends them across the world, and at nightfall they return to whisper in his ear everything they have seen. At his feet crouch 2 wolves, Jerry and Freki, whom he feeds with meat from his table, for Odin himself drinks only wine. In battle, Odin decides the fates of all warriors. He can paralyze enemies with fear or grant his chosen heroes invincible strength. The Berserkers, warriors who fought in a trance-like fury, were sworn to his service. Odin is the god of wisdom, poetry, war, and death. Complex, unpredictable, and utterly compelling, he is the central figure of the Norse pantheon. Odin's son is Thor, the most popular of all gods among the Vikings. He is the protector of Midgard, the enemy of giants, the god of thunder. His hammer, Mjolnir, is so powerful it can level mountains. When Thor rides his chariot pulled by two goats, the sky thunders. Thor is not clever like Odin. He is straightforward. He solves problems by hitting them. And the Vikings loved him for it. Tiny hammer amulets are the most common religious objects found in Viking graves, a sign of Thor's protection. Then there is Baldr, the most beloved of all gods. He is the son of Odin and Frigg, renowned for his goodness, wisdom, and beauty. He lives with his wife Nanna in Breidablik, one of the most beautiful houses in all Asgard, so pure that nothing unclean could exist there. The myths about Baldr center on his death, the greatest tragedy in Norse mythology. Frigg is Odin's wife, goddess of marriage and motherhood. She rules Asgard as queen, weaving the fates of men and gods. She alone may sit beside Odin on the throne Hultgård and gaze upon all the worlds. Tyr is the god of law and heroic glory. He is one-handed, the result of his brave oath when the gods bound the wolf Fenrir. Only Tyr was willing to place his hand in the wolf's mouth as a pledge. Heimdallr stands guard at Bifrost, the rainbow bridge. He needs less sleep than a bird, sees for 100 miles in any direction, and hears grass growing on the earth. His horn Gjallarhorn will sound at the beginning of Ragnarök. These are the Aesir, the gods of power, war, and sovereignty. They are not perfect. They make mistakes, they break oaths, they scheme against each other. But they also protect, create, and strive against the forces of chaos. And like us, they face their doom without flinching. In Norse mythology, there are two families of gods, the Aesir and the Vanir. While the Aesir, Odin, Thor, and their kin, rule over war, power, and sovereignty, the Vanir are something else entirely. They are older, more mysterious, and deeply connected to the natural world. The Vanir are associated with nature, vegetation, and fertility. They bring peace, prosperity, and abundance. While the Aesir build fortresses and prepare for battle, the Vanir tend the fields, calm the seas, and ensure that crops grow and children are born. Only 3 Vanir are clearly named in the sources, Njord and his children, Freyr and Freyja. But there were likely more. A mysterious goddess called Nerthus, described by the Roman historian Tacitus in the 1st century CE, shares a clear linguistic connection with Njord, suggesting a much older tradition. The Vanir probably have an older history than the Aesir and have traditionally been seen as gods of the ordinary people, farmers, fishermen, and families, rather than the warrior elite. They dwelt in Vanaheim, one of the 9 realms connected by Yggdrasil, the world tree. But the two families of gods did not always live in peace. According to the sources, a war broke out between the Aesir and the Vanir, a conflict that some scholars interpret as reflecting real cultural clashes between different religious traditions. The war ended in a stalemate, and both sides agreed to exchange hostages to ensure lasting peace. At the head of the Vanir stands Njord. He is the god of the sea, wind, and wealth, a deity of immense importance to a culture of sailors, fishermen, and traders. Njord's dominion is primarily over the sea and the winds. He is often invoked by sailors and fishermen to ensure safe voyages and good catches. He is also associated with wealth and prosperity, as the sea was a source of livelihood and riches for the ancient Norse people through fishing and trade. His hall is called Noten, ship enclosure, or harbor, fittingly placed above the sea he calms and directs. After the war between the Aesir and the Vanir, Njord and his children were sent as hostages to live among the Aesir. Far from being prisoners, they were honored guests. Odin himself set Njord in charge of sacrifices in the temple, a position of great renown. But Njord's life among the Aesir was not without difficulties. He entered into an ill-fated marriage with the giantess Skadi, daughter of the Jotunjatsi. After the gods killed her father, Skadi came to Asgard seeking revenge. To appease her, the gods allowed her to choose a husband from among them, but she could only see their feet. Hoping to choose the beautiful Baldr, she instead picked Njord, whose feet she found most fair. The marriage was doomed from the start. Skadi loved her mountain home, the snow, and the howling wolves. Njord longed for the sea, the gulls, and the gentle waves. They tried to compromise, 9 nights in the mountains, 3 by the sea, but neither could bear the other's world. Eventually they parted, and Skadi returned to her mountains alone. There is no more baffling figure in Norse mythology than Loki. He is counted among the Aesir but is not one of them. His father was a giant, far-body, dangerous striker. His mother was Laufey or Nal. He is the god of mischief, the contriver of all fraud, the trickster who can change sex and shape at will. Loki is unusual for a god. He once had a brief liaison with a giantess, Angrboda, by whom he had 3 monstrous children, the wolf Fenrir, the serpent Jormungandr, and Hel, the goddess of the realm of the dead. Yet he also gave birth, in the shape of a mare, he bore Odin's 8-legged horse, Sleipnir. He is seen in company with Odin and the obscure god Honor, and he is called the friend of Thor. Sometimes he helps the gods out of trouble. Sometimes he creates it. He seems to symbolize impulsive intelligence, together with an irrepressible urge to act and an unpredictable maliciousness. In an early poem, Odin and Loki had mixed their blood as foster brothers. Some scholars have suggested that Loki was a hypostasis of Odin, a darker side of the All-Father himself. He is beautiful and comely to look upon, but evil in spirit, very fickle in habit. Loki eats the heart of an evil woman and grows pregnant. He fights with Heimdall in the shape of a seal for possession of Freyja's necklace. He sneaks into her residence in the form of a fly to steal the same precious object. He is a shapeshifter, a boundary crosser, a being who exists between categories, neither fully god nor fully giant, neither fully male nor fully female. From Loki's union with the giantess Angrboda came 3 children, 3 beings so terrible that the gods themselves feared them. The first is Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent. Odin threw him into the deep sea that surrounds all lands. There he grew so enormous that he now encircles the entire world, biting his own tail. When he releases his tail, Ragnarök will begin. The second is Fenrir, the wolf. The gods raised him at Asgard, trying to keep him tame. But he grew so fast and so strong that only the god Tyr dared to feed him. The gods decided to bind him. Twice they tried with massive iron chains, Lading and Dromi, and twice Fenrir shattered them. Finally, they asked the dwarves to forge a special fetter. They made Gleipnir from 6 impossible things, the sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, and the spittle of a bird. It was smooth and soft as a silken ribbon, but stronger than any chain. Fenrir suspected treachery. He agreed to be bound only if one of the gods placed a hand in his mouth as a pledge. Tyr alone stepped forward. When Fenrir realized he could not break Gleipnir, he bit off Tyr's hand. The wolf will remain bound until Ragnarök, when he will break free and devour Odin himself. The third child is Hel. Odin cast her into Niflheim, giving her authority over 9 worlds. She rules the dead, all those who die of sickness or old age. Her hall is Kaldvulgnir, damp and cold. Her dish is hunger, her knife famine. She is half black, half flesh-colored, half living, half dead. She is a fitting ruler for the Shadow Realm, the place where souls go when they leave the world of the living. Baldr began to dream of his own death. Night after night, dark visions troubled his sleep, forebodings that weighed heavily on his heart. When he told the gods of these dreams, they gathered in council, for Baldr was the most beloved of all beings in Asgard. His death would be an irreplaceable loss. His mother Frigg, determined to protect her son from any harm, set out to make him invulnerable. She traveled throughout the 9 worlds, seeking oaths from every living thing. Fire and water, iron and stone, trees and animals, birds and serpents, diseases and poisons, all swore never to harm Baldr. This was no small task. Frigg obtained solemn promises from everything she encountered, from the earth beneath their feet, from the metals that would become weapons, from the very diseases that might carry sickness. Only one thing she overlooked. Growing on a slope east of Valhalla was a small plant, the mistletoe. She thought it too young and insignificant to swear an oath. Now Baldr was invincible. The gods made sport of this newfound power. They would gather at the thing, their sacred assembly, and throw weapons at Baldr, axes, spears, arrows. Everything would stop before touching him, deflected by the power of the oaths. It became a joyful game, proof of their beloved brother's safety. But one god did not join in the merriment. Loki, the trickster, watched with growing resentment. He could not bear to see Baldr so honored, so loved. Disguising himself as an old woman, he approached Frigg and asked, "Have all things sworn oaths never to harm Baldr?" Frigg, not recognizing the trickster, replied, "All things have sworn, except one small shrub growing west of Valhalla. It is called mistletoe. I thought it too young to demand an oath from." Loki had the information he needed. Loki retrieved the mistletoe. It was a small, unassuming plant, but now it would become the deadliest weapon in all the 9 worlds. He returned to the field where the gods were gathered. Standing apart from the crowd was Hr, Baldr's blind brother. Loki approached him and asked, "Why do you not join the game and shoot at Baldr like the others?" Hr answered, "I am blind, and I cannot see where Baldr stands. Besides, I have no weapon." Loki replied, "You should still honor Baldr as others do. I will guide your hand. Take this dart and shoot it at him." Hr took the mistletoe dart. Following Loki's guidance, he threw it toward where Baldr stood. The small shaft flew through the air, and pierced Baldr's chest. The beloved god fell dead to the ground. In that moment, the world changed. The gods stood speechless, frozen in horror. They looked at each other, unable to speak, unable to act. The most beloved of all beings lay dead before them, and they knew who had caused it. But they could not take vengeance, for the place where they stood was a sacred sanctuary, where violence was forbidden. When they finally found their voices, the gods wept. But grief turned to despair when Frigg asked if any would ride to hell and offer a ransom for Baldr's return. Ymir, another son of Odin, volunteered. He mounted Odin's 8-legged horse Sleipnir and rode for 9 nights through dark valleys to the underworld. Hell agreed to release Baldr, but only if every living thing in all the worlds wept for him. And everything did. Trees wept, stones wept, animals wept, humans wept. All except one giantess, who was almost certainly Loki in disguise. Baldr remained in hell until Ragnarök. The death of Baldr was the greatest tragedy in Norse mythology. Trust between the gods was shattered. The bonds that held the world together began to fray. Ragnarök was coming. Ragnarök is not the end of the world. It is the fate of the gods. The word means, twilight of the gods, the final destiny that awaits even the mightiest beings in all the 9 worlds. The signs will be many and terrible. First comes Fimbulwinter, the Great Winter. 3 winters in a row with no summer in between. Snow falls from all directions, frost grips the earth, and the sun gives no warmth. The world descends into chaos. Brother fights brother, fathers kill sons, mothers betray daughters. Morality collapses completely. Then the wolves will catch their prey. The wolf skull, who has chased the sun across the sky since the beginning of time, will finally devour her. His brother Hati will swallow the moon. The stars will vanish from the sky, plunging the world into darkness. The earth itself will shake. Mountains tumble, trees are uprooted, and every bond and fetter will break. The wolf Fenrir, bound for so long by the magical ribbon Gleipnir, will finally break free. The serpent Jormungandr will rise from the ocean depths, spewing poison across land and sea, causing waves to crash against the shores. From the north, a ship comes sailing. It is Naglfar, the vessel built entirely from the untrimmed fingernails and toenails of the dead. Now it breaks free, piloted by the giant Hrym, carrying an army of frost giants across the boiling sea. From the east, another force approaches. Loki, having broken his bonds, leads the armies of Hel, all the dishonored dead, all the enemies of the gods. He steers a second ship, also filled with giants from the underworld. From the south comes the greatest threat of all. The fire giants under Surtur march from Muspelheim, their swords blazing brighter than the sun. The rainbow bridge Bifrost shatters beneath their feet as they cross into the realm of the gods. Heimdall, the watchman of the gods, stands on his tower Himinjorg and sees everything approaching. He raises Gjallarhorn to his lips and blows. The sound echoes through all 9 worlds, a call that cannot be ignored. Odin consults the severed head of Mimir, then leads the gods onto the battlefield. From Valhalla, the Einherjar, all the warriors who have died in battle since the beginning of time, march forth, 540 doors opening at once. The armies meet on Vgrr plain, a vast battlefield stretching 100 leagues in every direction. Each god faces their destined enemy. Odin fights Fenrir. The All-Father, wisest of the gods, rides into battle against the wolf. But it is not enough. Fenrir opens his enormous jaws, one against the earth, the other against the sky, and swallows Odin whole. Thor faces his ancient enemy, the serpent Jormungandr. He strikes with Mjolnir, crushing the serpent's head. For 9 steps, Thor rejoices in his victory. Then he staggers and falls, the serpent's poison has killed him. Freyr fights Surtur. Long ago, Freyr gave away his magic sword for love of the giantess Geir. Now he faces the fire giant armed only with an antler. He falls quickly. Tyr, the one-handed god of justice, fights Garm, the hound of hell. They tear each other apart. Loki and Heimdall, ancient enemies, bound by blood and hatred, meet for the final time. They fight and kill each other. Surtur covers the world in fire. Flames consume everything, the earth, the sky, the 9 worlds. The land sinks into the sea. The stars fall from the sky. Steam rises, fire dances, and darkness descends. The gods are dead. The world is gone. Ragnarök has come. The fire fades. The waters recede. The earth rises again from the sea, green, beautiful, and fertile. A new world emerges from the ashes of the old, without the suffering and evil that plagued the previous cycle. The fields of the new world grow grain without being sown. No farmer needs to plant. No one needs to labor. The earth provides everything freely. This is a vision of perfect peace, a golden age restored. The surviving gods return to the place where their city once stood. Vidar and Vali, sons of Odin, survive the flames. Vidar avenged his father at Ragnarök, tearing apart the wolf Fenrir who swallowed Odin. Now he walks in the new world, carrying the memory of what was lost. Mi and Magni, sons of Thor, also survive. They find their father's hammer Mjolnir, left behind after Thor killed the serpent Jormungandr. In the new world, these 2 brothers will carry on Thor's legacy, protecting the reborn creation with the mighty hammer. And then a miracle happens. Baldr returns. The most beloved of all gods, who was killed by the mistletoe and trapped in hell for so long, emerges from the underworld. With him comes Hr, his blind brother, who was tricked into killing him. They are reconciled. Together, they walk in the new world, free from Loki's deception. The gods sit together in the grass and talk. They remember the ancient runes, the deep wisdom that Odin gained through his sacrifice on Yggdrasil. They speak of the great serpent and the wolf, and all the wonders of the past. In their memories, the old world lives on. But what of humanity? In the old world, almost everyone perished. The fires of Surtur consumed everything, the cities, the forests, the fields where people lived and worked. Yet 2 humans survive. Their names are Lif and Lfraser, Life and Life Desirer. During the final battle, while Surtur's fire swept across the world, they hid deep within the wood of Hodmamir. Some scholars believe this would may be another name for Yggdrasil itself, the world tree that shelters and protects. There they remained, hidden from the flames, nourished by the morning dew. When the fire faded and the earth rose again, they emerged. From them, a new humanity will spread across the reborn world. The poem Vafranismal describes this in the words of the giant Vafnir, answering Odin's question about which humans will survive. Lif and Lfraser, they will hide in Hodmamir's wood. They have the morning dew for food. From them the new kindred will be born. A new sun also appears. Before Ragnarök, the wolf skull devoured the old sun. But she left behind a daughter, just as beautiful, just as warm. This new sun travels the same path her mother once followed, bringing light and life to the reborn world. There is no sin in this new creation. No suffering, no need for sacrifice. The gods and humans live together in harmony, free from the cycle of violence that destroyed the old world. The new world is innocent, a second chance for everything. This is the final message of Norse mythology. Even in the face of inevitable destruction, something survives. Something continues. The cycle ends not in darkness, but in light. Not in despair, but in hope. We began this journey with a question. What did the Vikings believe? And now, after traveling through the 9 worlds, meeting the gods, witnessing the creation and the end of all things, we have our answer. Norse mythology is not just a collection of stories. It is a mirror reflecting the Viking mind, their values, their fears, their deepest hopes. Look at Odin, sacrificing his eye for wisdom. The Vikings valued knowledge above all, even at great cost. Look at Thor, protecting Midgard against the giants. They understood that safety requires strength and vigilance. Look at Baldr, beloved and innocent, whose death shattered the world. They knew that even the purest good can be destroyed by malice. The cosmology itself reflects their world. Yggdrasil, the world tree, connects all realms, just as the Vikings' ships connected distant lands. The Norns weave fate at its roots, just as the Vikings believed their lives were woven into a pattern larger than themselves. And at the center of it all stands Midgard, the world of humans. Protected by a wall from Ymir's eyelashes, surrounded by an ocean where the serpent Jormungandr lurks. This is how the Vikings saw themselves, a small community of order, surrounded by chaos, constantly threatened but always enduring. The myths also reveal something deeper. Unlike many other ancient religions, the Norse gods are not immortal. They will die at Ragnarök. They know their fate and face it anyway. This is perhaps the most Viking quality of all, courage in the face of certain doom. The warrior who laughs as he charges into battle, knowing he will fall. The poet who composes one last verse as the axe falls. This is the spirit of the North. The Viking Age ended 1,000 years ago. The temples crumbled. The sacrifices ceased. Christianity spread across the North, and the old gods were forgotten, or so it seemed. But myths do not die. They transform. They hide in stories, in songs, in the very language we speak. The names of the days still carry their memory. Tuesday is Tyr's day. Wednesday is Odin's day. Thursday is Thor's day. Friday is Frigg's day. Every week, we speak their names without realizing it. The stories survived in Iceland, preserved by Christian scribes who recognized their value. Snorri Sturluson wrote them down in the 13th century, and without him, we would know almost nothing. The Poetic Edda, the Codex Regius, the sagas, these treasures were kept, copied, passed down through generations. And then, centuries later, they exploded back into consciousness. Wagner built operas around them. Tolkien reshaped them into Middle-earth. Marvel turned Thor into a superhero. Neil Gaiman retold them for a new generation. Video games, movies, TV shows, the myths are everywhere. Why do they endure? Because they speak to something universal. The struggle between order and chaos. The courage to face inevitable death. The hope that something new will rise from the ashes. The gods of the Vikings were not perfect. They made mistakes, broke oaths, caused suffering. But they also sacrificed, loved, and faced their doom without flinching. In that, they are deeply human. And so, the echoes continue. Every time someone reads a saga, watches a movie about Thor, or simply says, Thursday, the old gods live again. Their world ended in fire. But from the ashes, a new world rose, and in it, their stories continue forever. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Norse mythology. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to Echoes of History. Every week, we uncover the past, one story at a time. Until next time.